Okay, so it is 7:01 and we'll call this meeting of the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission to order. And this is a virtual meeting which is allowed by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, extending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025. This meeting is being recorded. If anyone else would like to record the meeting, they may, but please notify the chair. Also, if you have any documents to present at the meeting, please present them to the chair as well. Let's begin with a roll call. Kate, would you please?
Sure. So we do our roll call alphabetical by municipality. So I'll call the municipality, and if the delegate is present, please say your full name. If the alternate is present, please say your full name following the delegate. And if the delegate's not here, you go first. Okay, Adams, Alford, Beckett, Cheshire. I see Peter's connecting, so I'll come back to him. Clarksburg, Dalton.
Caleb Darby, delegate.
Egremont, Florida. Great Barrington.
Pedro Pachano, delegate.
And Malcolm Fick, alternate.
Hancock, Hinsdale. I saw Keith. Did we lose him? Hinsdale.
Yeah.
We'll come
Here, Cheshire,
Yep.
delegate.
Thank you, Peter. Hinsdale? No. Lanesboro.
Leanne Yingard, delegate.
Lee.
Buck Donovan, delegate.
Lenox. Monterey.
Laura Mency, delegate.
Mount Washington. New Ashford. New Marlboro. North Adams. Otis. Peru. Seen Sam yet? Pittsfield.
You're on mute, Sheila.
Pittsfield. Did we get you back?
Sheila Irvin,
Yeah.
delegate.
Thanks. Richmond. Sandusfield. Savoy.
Marie Saucier present. I don't know what my role is.
Thanks. Sheffield. Stockbridge.
Rasmussen, alternate.
Tyringham.
Amanda Hamilton, delegate.
Washington. West Stockbridge. Williamstown.
Roger Bolton, alternate.
Windsor.
Doug McNally, delegate.
Anybody I missed? Keith. Hinsdale. You're with us, right? Yes, I can see you. Thanks. All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Before we get started with the agenda, further on the agenda, Tom, we'd like to welcome Jocelyn. Would you like to introduce Jocelyn?
Or I'll have Laura introduce her since she's working in the economic section.
Okay, thank you.
So Jocelyn Latvala joined BRPC's economic development team last week. Her video is probably not connecting right now, or I'm sure she would turn that on, but she is going to be helping and across the board with economic development projects, including digital equity around the county, and then also with our work in individual municipalities on economic development shared planning services.
Laura, this is Doug. your background is Circuit Trail in Windsor at Notch, right?
You gonna have snow
People
there?
were talking about backgrounds in Florida, and I thought, let's just bring it
Yeah.
back home.
Oh, I spent many, many,
Thank-
many hours over the past 40 years skiing on trail. So yeah, I recognize it.
Okay, and welcome, Jocelyn.
Malcolm, if I may go back to the roll call, I just want to check in if Diana is Diana Mott from Beckett. If she wanted to introduce herself as the alternate from Beckett. Diana? Okay,
It's not,
I tried.
okay. The next order of business is to approve the minutes from November 16th, last meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Second, Sheila.
Thank you, Sheila. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any corrections or comments for the minutes? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote.
And for expediency, forgive the formality, I'm just doing first names. Peter,
Aye.
Caleb,
Aye.
Pedro,
Aye.
Keith, Keith,
He's on mute.
No, he's
Uh,
talking, we can hear him, but just faintly.
okay. Leanne,
Yes.
Buck,
yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Sheila,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
thank you.
Hey, thank you all. That passed unanimously. The next item on the agenda is comments from and discussion from any BRPC delegates or alternate. If anybody has any issues related to the agenda or any other issues, please speak up. No hands, no comments. Okay. Seeing none, we'll go on to the next order of business, which is comments from the public. If anyone from who is not an alternate or a delegate would like to speak on an issue on the agenda or not, please speak up. Raise your hand. Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a hand there, Malcolm.
Yeah. Andrew,
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm joining from Route 2 right now. I'm heading to Boston for the Mass Municipal Association conference that starts tomorrow morning. I'm Andrew Fitch. I'm based out of North Adams. I'm a new city councilor in North Adams, and I'm also the chair of the Community Development Committee within the North Adams City Council. So I thought I should make an appearance and at least start to try to attend these events and make sure that North Adams is represented and is also participating. So I just wanted to say hello and listen for a while until my service runs out, if you don't mind.
thank you. Welcome. Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll go on to the next item on the agenda then, which is the discussion of executive committee actions taken. I think we had two December 7th and January 4th meetings of the executive committee. These actions were included in the package. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the actions that were taken by the executive committee? Okay, then seeing none, we will go on to the next item on the agenda, which is consideration of the amendment of the BRPC bylaws. And Tom, do you want to talk about this?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So, right, currently our bylaws have the terms for the officers and committee members to be 1 year. And the Commission Development Committee met and discussed and recommended actually that we extend this out to 2 years. It's somewhat time consuming to kind of track all the different people down and get on commitment. And also it does seem that some of these meetings where we meet relatively infrequently, that it takes a bit of time to get up to speed, and a year really isn't long enough time to do that. So that's really what the amendments are proposed for.
Okay. Let's begin with I'll entertain a motion on this.
I'll make a motion that we approve and accept the bylaws to make appointments of members of committees and chairs to 2 years.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The language is to be changed is included in the packet. Does anyone have any comments or questions about this discussion? Okay, I would just like to throw in a couple things. One, I think it's a good idea. Takes a while. It does take a while to get up to speed on the committees, and by the time you're up to speed, it's time to be reappointed. The other thing is this takes a 2/3 vote from the members present. Is that right, Tom?
That's correct.
So this takes a 2/3 vote from the members present, and so we can proceed to a roll call vote, and then we'll count them up.
Oh, could I just add, it's my understanding that a lot of the appointments of delegates and alternates will remain 1 year appointments. I think my appointment is by some sort of town tradition or ordinance or whatever is always only 1 year. And I'm sure there are some other, I think many planning boards, for example, change the selection of the delegate every year. So
Yes, that's correct, Roger. It's not going to affect the appointments made by the towns, just the for our officers and
Right.
committee members.
And there's a provision in the language, I believe, that covers the eventuality if a committee member is no longer a delegate or an alternate. So I think that's covered for replacing the person who's no longer on the commission. Any other comments? I mean, Roger, you didn't mean that in opposition to were you in opposition to the bylaw change, or were you was that just a comment on?
No, it was just a clarifying comment for delegates and alternates who are very new, might want to know that. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any further comments? Okay, then Kate, can we proceed to a vote?
Yes. Peter,
Aye.
Caleb,
Aye.
Pedro,
Aye.
Keith,
He's giving me a thumbs up. Yes.
Thumbs up. That's
Okay.
good.
Thank you.
I think we'll have to note
That
that
worked.
somehow.
We take
Lee-
non-verbal votes.
Leanne,
Yes.
Buck,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Sheila,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everybody. That makes it unanimous, and we don't have to do the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a presentation and discussion of the Commonwealth's Economic Development Plan, and we have a guest here tonight, Ann Goby, who's the Director of Rural Affairs, has agreed to join us and talk about the Commonwealth's Economic Development Plan and hopefully how it affects the rural areas especially. Tom, do you have anything to add? Introduction?
No, I think that's good. Take it away, Ann. It's all yours.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Tom. And I know I had sent some slides. I'm not sure if you wanted to incorporate those, or did folks have a chance to look at those? How do you want to do things?
I didn't send them out yet, but
Okay.
it's really how you want to go. I've got them keyed up so I can do that if
Yeah,
you'd like.
so well, I'll tell you what, why don't we do this? Maybe it's something to send to folks later that they can take a look at. What I tried to do is that I know that most of you, or many of you, or all of you are probably very familiar with the economic development plan that was filed. And so I don't want to go into a lot of background. Tom had mentioned that you're well aware of kind of what led up to it. But now what happens is that economic development plan needs to be put into a bill form. And maybe, Andrew, maybe you'll hear a little bit more about it tomorrow too at the MMA, although I think you're going to hear a lot. The governor and lieutenant governor plan to speak about a municipal modernization bill that will be coming out. So I think that'll probably be the big topic of conversation, but I do expect you'll hear some economic development as well. So what happens now is that from this plan, we have to put it into a bill that then has to go through the legislature. So what I thought I would just talk about kind of the big issues with it. If any of you had an opportunity to hear the governor speak last night, you know that she spoke about some new initiatives. And of course, I hear people say to me, well, new initiative sounds like a lot more money somewhere. How's that all going to work? But, for me, and hearing what the governor has to say, is that if you're not bold, sometimes it's more expensive not to do something than to do something. And I'm happy about some of what she is talking about. And as far as the economic development plan, when she came into office, she had a lot of priorities to make sure that Massachusetts would be a place to provide greater affordability, equity, competitiveness. And we are a wonderful place to live. In the short time that I've been in this role as Director of Rural Affairs, although I had visited many different communities in the western part of the state and other rural areas where there are 181, by the way, statewide, we live in an absolutely gorgeous state. And the more towns and the more places that I visit, I realize that. And the governor mentioned that last night as well, saying that the real strength of Massachusetts is its people. And the folks in the rural areas, and if you heard her speak last night, I was very happy because the first group of people that she pointed to was a couple from Deerfield, the Savages, who had lost so much during the floods on their farm. And she spoke about the resiliency and how resilient people in Western Mass and our farmers and our rural community is. And she talked about rural quite a bit last night. And I was extremely happy about that. So the other big ticket items and the big part of the economic development plan, obviously, is housing. Today, the Affordable Housing Act that the governor filed had a hearing. And right before I came on, it started at 12 o'clock. The hearing is still going on. They had 200 people signed up to testify today. So that hearing is still happening as we speak. So the folks on that committee, I'm not sure how many people are left to testify, but I think it shows how extremely important that issue is, but everywhere across the Commonwealth. And the ideas that we have to come up with, specifically in rural areas, we know that in areas that we live, that we may have a lot of land, but it's probably protected by the state. That the amount of open land that's available in our communities for housing, a lot of times it's not there. So we have to be kind of creative. And what do we see in many rural areas? Well, we have a lot of old mills, right? And working to figure out ways to bring those mills back online as housing. It's going to cost a lot of money to do that. The governor has made a commitment within the budget with what she's talked about And as you'll hear probably, Andrew, tomorrow from the governor and lieutenant governor, that they're committed to doing that with this Municipal Modernization Act as well, to try to figure out a way to get these, to get housing, to make things usable again within our communities. So the housing piece obviously is very big. Part of her housing plan talks about the accessory dwelling units to have by right. Some communities have already adopted that. Again, had the hearing today. We'll see what happens from that, because now there'll be another bite at the apple. The Housing Committee will come out with their version of this bond bill. It will then go to the bonding committees in both the House and Senate, as well as most likely the Ways and Means in the House and Senate as well. So there could very well be about 4 or 5 different iterations of that housing bond bill before it gets to the House and the Senate for a vote and finds its way back to the governor. But obviously hoping that many of the very aggressive and the ideas that the governor has in there will be preserved somehow. Transportation. The part of the economic development plan talks about a connected, safe, and reliable transportation network. It's critical. And to figure out ways to capitalize and to use the capital investment plan to achieve that objective. So the current fiscal year, the SIP, and that's the acronym, is centered around a framework that would prioritize reliability and modernization. So what does that mean for our rural areas? Well, you look at rural areas and we know that many places don't even have public transportation. So how do we look at our public transportation system to make sure that we're doing something that makes sense for people? So if it's an on-demand system, if it's working with our regional partners to figure out ways to bring transportation to people, because if you have elderly people in a community, and if they can't get to their doctors, if they can't do shopping, they can't get down to the barber or the hairdresser, it makes it extremely difficult for them to be able to stay in that community. And we want people to stay in their communities. So on the rural side of things, we have to be a lot more creative. We really have to look at maybe some of these on-demand services and trying to figure out ways to do things better, and also to do things better in a more regional way. That's also bringing in our work partners. And with the planning commissions and the work that you do, as you're looking at your own communities and where there is economic growth and what you can do to bring economic growth into an area. What do your businesses need? What do they talk about? As part of the economic development plan is, we know people say over and over again, they need to find some way to get capital. And there had been an idea that was floated a couple of years ago about trying to do some, to bring money specifically into rural areas, bringing in third parties that would help to capitalize programs and to do it as a tax incentive. It would require a fair amount of money that would need to be put up by the state, but then matched by these other third-person groups. It's been successful in some other states. Georgia has a fairly good program that they have put in place. It has sunsetted after about 5 years, but from it, they have seen that they have been able to bring in money into rural areas that normally would not get into those areas, and to create jobs and to maintain those jobs. If that is going to be part of this economic development plan and is still kind of in the works, there is some talk that may be looked at to see if there's some sort of incentive that can come in to encourage kind of this third-party investments. We tend to see it in the gateway communities have been successful in being able to get businesses to come in and to do that. That has been something that has been lacking in our rural areas, and we need to try to attract that. The governor spoke last night as well that Massachusetts not just needs to lead in climate, but to be the leader in climate technology. Again, what does that mean for our rural areas? Well, we have great brain trust in Western Mass and in our rural areas. When you think about the community colleges, the university system, and we have people here, but we need to keep those students here after they graduate. And what keeps them here? It's jobs. And when the governor spoke last night about the climate tech and for us to be a leader in that, she spoke about making sure that that is spread across all of Massachusetts. So not just to say that this is going to be something east of 495. This needs to be in our rural areas. It needs to be in Western Mass. And we need to be able to attract people and say to them, look at, we've got an area of the state that it's less expensive to live, that as we work on some of these transportation, it's easier to get to places, that with so many people being able to work remotely and to make sure that we have the connectivity that we need in our areas, we are an extremely desirable place to be. In addition to that, when you talk to young people and ask them what's important about where they want to live, they don't say they want to be next to a Walmart. They say they want to be next to open space. They want the ability to get to areas, whether it's rail trails, whether it's hiking trails, to be able to bike safely. That's the type of, and I know that I think later on in your agenda, you're talking about some of the outdoor investments that need to be made. That is a big part of the economic development plan as well, to work very closely with our tourism sector. In a couple of years, we're going to have the 250th anniversary of our country. The governor is really intent on capitalizing on that. We here in Massachusetts, with the start of freedom for this entire country, this is where it started, with the laying of the cornerstone at the State House by Paul Revere and Sam Adams. It started here in Massachusetts, and we want to be able to kind of take that excitement and as a way to bring people not just into the state, but into our rural areas. So I think it gives a good opportunity for planning organizations as they're thinking out a bit on ways that you can really kind of capitalize on that 250th sort of momentum, because there's going to be a big push on that on the state level, and to really engage every aspect and every single city and town on that moving forward. So I think that there's a lot of excitement, a lot of things that are happening. The infrastructure, as I mentioned already, that part of the big infrastructure is that we have a one-stop grant program. Tomorrow, again, at the MMA, they'll probably announce it as well. It'll be the opening for the FY25 round for the one-stop grant program. As you know, the planning commissions are extremely involved in that. Many of you have helped communities to either help to work on master plans that they have put in for to be able to get grant monies. So the one-stop grant program will open tomorrow. That's basically 13 different grant programs, gives people an opportunity to put in their project, and it's sort of kind of one-stop shopping, if you will. They plug in what the project is, and they can find out very quickly which of those 13 programs is the best fit for them. The Rural Development Fund that is part of that currently is a $5 million fund. I would like to see that get to at least $15 million. This last grant cycle, we had $78 million worth of requests for that $5 million. Out of that, there were 17 awards made from the 77 applications that came in. So it is an extremely oversubscribed grant program, but extremely important as well for our rural communities. So those are, I know I kind of threw out a bunch of stuff there all at once, and I hope it made some sort of sense to you. And the slides that I provided Tom with, I think it would give you an opportunity to kind of look through, and I tried to break things out in different sectors, whether with small business, with tourism, with rural, and to kind of give you an idea of where the state needs to put its focus and the type of work that this administration is really committed to doing, but it requires partnerships, right? The administration can't get these things done on their own. They need the support of people. They need the support of the legislature in order to move anything forward. And I see a hand.
Doug, you're muted.
Yes, this is Doug Nally. I spent 5 years shepherding the early learning challenge grant through Western Massachusetts, and one of the things that the governor has included in her plan is a plan to make early education and care, child care, more accessible to families. And I think that needs to be emphasized along with the other things, because dollar for dollar, it's the best investment a state, a community can make. The return on a dollar for early education and care is $15 down the road. You know, kids are ready for kindergarten, they're more likely to graduate, yada, yada, yada. I don't have to throw the data to people. So I think it's very important that as part of BRPC's reaction to the governor's plan is that we weigh in support of the early education and care component, because in Berkshire County, that's a major hindrance to economic growth when families can't go to work because they don't have child care, and because our public school systems are challenged by kids coming to kindergarten 2 to 3 years behind.
When she spoke last night, that received a very arousing applause if you were watching, because there's no question, because it affects every single sector. And absolutely, if people don't have childcare, they can't go to work, it causes problems down the line. But the preparedness of children, and having been a former high school teacher, you know, by the time the kids get to high school, it's awful to say this, but it's too late, right? You know, if the students haven't received that early intervention, it makes it much more difficult. And then you get into situations where you have students going into community college that are woefully unprepared, and the community colleges are having to provide very remedial sort of classes. And there's no question. And think about that extra cost. You know, the cost to the families for their student to be taking remedial classes when they should be maybe in advanced and able to get something else and to move along a little quicker through the system. So there's absolutely no question that is extremely important in her idea to have universal pre-K. You know, I think it's time. It's time.
I mean, Massachusetts pictures ourselves as a leading state in education, and yet Oklahoma has universal pre-K, and
Yeah. Yep. No, yeah, I don't think you'll get any, I don't think you'll get any pushback or argument on that. Absolutely right.
I'm not suggesting there'd be pushback, but I'm just as a member of BRPC, I think that we should embed that into our plans for pushing economic development in the county and support that. We've lost a whole mess of family-based, home-based programs due to the COVID thing. And right now it is very, very hard to find high quality, affordable care for a middle-class family.
Mhm.
Okay, other questions? I know everybody's got one or two piled up here.
Folks, that 1% battery might is going to die. Thank you so much for this. I'll see you
Thank you,
next.
Andy. Peter?
Yeah, I know you had slides. Would it be useful to go just through them very quickly?
Sure. Tom, I think you have them, so I don't.
Yeah, I'll get them up, and you can run through them pretty quickly,
I
because
can
I'm
run
not
through
sure.
them really quickly, and then and then if they're available for you to kind of digest a little bit more, I think it'll be helpful.
Yeah, maybe you could just introduce what we're
I'll be
getting.
happy to.
Okay, let's see if I can do this here. Is that showing up?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and yeah, we can go through them quickly. This slide was just a bit of information from when people came to speak at the various sessions. They had all sorts of different comments. So try to break things out in various groupings, just so that you can see kind of an idea of what some of the challenges that people brought forward at these sessions that were held across the state. And so that's what I tried to put on this slide to give you an idea, the things. And I think as you look at them, you say, oh yeah, those are definitely issues that we have in our community, you know, the water and sewer investments, the equity investments, the workforce and talent, trying to keep people and to recruit and retention. So you can go to the next slide. So then I tried to break it down into a few specific areas. So life sciences obviously is very big in Massachusetts. We know that the governor spoke last night about investing even more into that. And then, but some of the challenges that we have and where we can do siting, the competition that we have from other states. And part of it, of course, is, you know, we're not a cheap state to be in. Our energy costs tend to be rather high and in our housing. And so we know that we have great opportunities. The governor has been able to get, just in this past few months, some more money from the federal government on some major investments in life sciences, but we have a lot more to do. You can go to the next slide if you like. And this just kind of gets into some of the tech stuff, or what we can do to try to recruit and retain students specifically. You know, what do they need and what do we have to do to make sure that they stay here? Just to give you an example, this is, you know, a lot of people think it just comes down to money to offer. And I had, when I was looking for someone to fill the position, that we had an open position within the office for a program manager. And there was one person that we had looked at for that position. And they came back to us. And when their current employer found out that there was a possibility this person was going to come over to the state government, they went back to them and said, listen, we'll allow you to make your own schedule and work on just the projects you want to work on. Well, how do you compete with that? So it's very interesting in this very competitive market right now that what people are doing to retain talent. But it's a big thing. The other part, down on number 3, I thought is an interesting one, is about trying to create an environment that attracts immigrants. And I know that there's going to be a meeting of rural folks back in April that's going to be coming up. And they're going to take a look, and I believe they're going to invite someone from Brattleboro, Vermont to come to speak. Brattleboro has taken a very interesting approach on this because they did not have enough people to fill some of the jobs within their community. And they actively went after the immigrant population. And it's a very interesting model, and I do think it's one that can be replicated. And then, of course, making Massachusetts more desirable to live, which goes back to the point that was just made specifically about childcare. If you want to go to the next one. Real estate and development. This goes a bit with the housing bond bill that I spoke about just a few minutes ago. But we also realize that within our communities that there's a lot of differences from community to community on some of the codes. And you know, over and over, I hear from people that will say, well, I don't want to go to town X because we hear that the building inspector in that community, you know, the conservation commission in that community, you know, they don't really want any type of building. They don't want anything to happen there. And so, you know, we need to kind of look at some frameworks to make sure that there's some equity and to make sure that permitting is done in the right way, as well as to do things to expedite things when they can be expedited. It shouldn't take forever for people to go through a permitting process. And if it's on the state side, they need to do something. The state needs to make those changes to make sure that we're expediting things and to make things a little bit easier for folks. And then most of it focuses on the housing production that we just talked about a minute ago. You can go to the next one if you like. Advanced manufacturing. So again, you know, it's to try to create that environment that will attract companies, but also that once you have a company in place, to make sure that they have the capital and they have what they need to be able to expand. You know, that's the other big part of it. You know, we want to make sure that the jobs are there and that these companies can grow. And if they can grow, we want them to grow in Massachusetts and not to feel that they have to pick up roots and go somewhere else. And we have to have that pipeline. We have to make sure that we have the workforce available to them. And I think part of that too is looking back at our traditional high schools. As many of you know, that it's very difficult to get into Voc schools. Every single Voc school has a wait list a mile long, and it's very difficult. And so the traditional high schools now are looking at what's called Chapter 74 programs to bring vocational kind of programming back into the high schools, but for programs that make sense for that community. That's something that can be used. Give you an example, I live in Spencer, and at David Prouty High School, we are trying to do things because of the child care crisis, that there is a child care certificate program that's coming through, so that the high school students will be able to graduate and have a certificate with child care. So those are the type of things that I think that our high schools have to start looking at, and to make sure that we're putting people in jobs, number one, that they like, but jobs that they want and that we need, but to keep them here and to figure out ways, and the internship programs that have to go along with that, and the mentorship that is so extremely important. You can go to the next one if you'd like. Climate, we talked a little bit as well, as I mentioned, to build this kind of world-class climate tech. And that's what the governor really wants to see. She really feels, and I agree with her. There's no reason that Massachusetts cannot be the leader. You know, we finally have Vineyard Wind online, and we're making, you know, finally the turbines are going, and we're putting some stuff back on the grid. But we need to kind of look at some of these programs, whether it's to create some pilot programs that create some of to provide access for new concepts, you know, new innovation, because we have the minds, we have the people that are here. Let's really tap into that and really build out that pipeline for the great climate tech jobs that are out there, including, you know, when you look on the rural side of things, you know, we need folks that can be soil engineers, people that will be able to deal with the climate changes. You know, when we saw the floodings that had happened, and people that can come in and figure out ways to make us more resilient. It's absolutely necessary, and we have to put our money into that. If you want to go to the next one. Tourism, again, also spoke a little bit about that. Right now, the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism is a pretty small office in the state. They are adding some more people on, as I mentioned, really trying to push that 250th theme and try to figure out ways to really capitalize on that. And again, we get into the workforce pipeline and changing some of that perception about tourism and hospitality jobs are all entry level, you know, and talking about how tourism is so extremely important to the economy of Massachusetts. And we need to do a better job with that. Just to give you a real quick example, if you were to travel on New York and to go on the New York Thruway, they have at their rest stops, you know, they're selling New York made products everywhere that you go on that. If you stop at one of the rest areas, one of the rest stops on the Mass Pike, you're not seeing that. You know, you go in there and you're seeing whatever, but you're not seeing mass-made products. And so, you know, there's things that we can do very simply to bring things here in Massachusetts for people who are traveling through, so they're seeing the products. They can walk into and buy some maple syrup that comes from Hinsdale or comes from somewhere in Western Mass. Right now, they're not able to do that. So there are simple things that can be done to really kind of up the game, if you will, and to help some of the economy of Massachusetts. The next one, please. Small business. Technical assistance is a major thing for our small businesses, but the other part is we have to make it much easier for people to get in the front door. They have to be able to realize that there's a way forward for these small businesses. One of the ideas is to create a statewide inventory of small business resources. Now, I know that folks, you've done a good job in Berkshire County. You know, you've got these great websites and people can go on and see what's there. But we don't have that. It's ridiculous that on the state level, we don't have that same thing. And so to have some of these platforms that would be available for our businesses, just so that they know what is out there, what resources are available for them. And we have to be more welcoming. We have to be more welcoming as a state, and we also have to be more welcoming as communities to really say to businesses, we want you on our main streets. We don't want to see closed front doors. We want those doors to be open, and we have to figure out ways to help them to do that. If you want to go to the next one, I think it's on rural. Yeah. And so on the rural side of things, as I mentioned too, we had talked about some of the big funding that needs to come into the states. One thing that did happen this past year was some more money for our roads. For the first time, there was a separate set aside of $25 million that was given to rural communities on top of their regular Chapter 90. And that was used on a formula based on population and road mileage. By using road mileage and having that count a little bit more, that benefited our rural communities. I had a meeting yesterday with some of my town officials, and Tom Hutchinson from Dalton was on. Tom said for him that he basically got another 50% of his normal on top of what he normally gets. I mean, it was a game changer for that one community. The governor has put in this budget that will be coming out another $24 million specifically for rural. So we, again, trying to really enhance our rural communities by making sure that they get their fair share, but also realizing that rural communities have the same problems that larger cities have, but typically don't have the ability to deal with it as easily. And, they deserve and they need that extra help. So those are just a few of the things. And again, those slides will be there for you to kind of go through in a little bit more detail, but it gives you kind of a little overview of some of the things that we're looking at and trying to work on.
Thank you. That was a good introduction. Other questions, comments?
Malcolm, I would just like to make a comment that I think the approach of this plan that integrates housing and community development and infrastructure as part of economic development is really an important component. It's not just about businesses and workforce. It's a recognition that the communities are key elements to overall economic development well-being. And I really like that as an emphasis of this plan.
Yeah, the other part that goes with that too is that in the past it didn't seem that there was a lot of cross-agency collaboration, and that is one thing that this plan really delves into. And again, the governor spoke about, and is part of her budget and part of her kind of going forward, that we can't be in these little individual silos. We have to come together, and we have to have that kind of cross-pollination that's so extremely important.
Just speaking for a member of a very small town, a tiny town, this rural road Chapter 74, Chapter 90 money was huge for us. It enabled us to do some maintenance work on some roads that were just getting intolerable.
Yeah, and I'm happy to say that I know that one of the recommendations, and I'm hoping that it will come out in the final report for the Mass Municipal modernization that the Lieutenant Governor is looking at, is to have a group come together and to really kind of go through Chapter 90 again, and to make it, because the way that it's set up right now, it does not benefit rural communities. So unless you put in this extra money year after year after year, there's no way for the rurals to be able to come up to where they should be. And in the past, you know, I know that when I had represented some smaller communities, and we would go back to DOT and say, hey, look, you know, we're gonna need more money for that road project. And they said, well, you didn't spend your Chapter 90 from last year. I was like, yeah, well, no kidding, because we only got $30,000 and we have to bank it for 3 or 4 years just to be able to do one portion of a project. You know, and that's crazy. And people in the cities, they don't get that concept. They don't realize how difficult it is to do road and bridge projects if you don't have at least you know, a minimal amount of funding. So part of it is to, and again, I'm hoping that we're going to see this, that there'll be some sort of commission that will be created to really look at the Chapter 90 formula to make it truly equitable, because it is not equitable as it is now.
Yeah, a single culvert in Windsor
Right.
costs $600,000.
Right.
And it would take us 3 years of our Chapter 90 money to pay
Absolutely.
on culvert.
No, it's crazy. Right. All right.
Okay.
So,
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
well, I have another comment too that I'd like to, or a question actually, is you started off and talking about a little bit about, you know, turning some of these items into bills.
Right.
And I know that this plan was somewhat mandated. You had to have the economic plan in the first year. But what are some of the next steps? I mean, you touched about a little bit with the housing bond bill. Is there going to be an economic development bill coming out?
Yes, there will absolutely be a bill that, so the larger ideas from the economic development plan now will need to be put into a bill form. So just to give you an example, on the section of the plan, and I think you had attached that, Tom, too, right, in the agenda items, the plan itself.
Yeah, a link
Okay.
to it, yes.
Right, so the link to the plan, so the plan itself was a little bit different than those slides that I had, was kind of just a little bit of background and will hopefully be helpful to you as you you know, look at the plan. But within the plan itself, things were broken down and there was a rural section, okay? So example, part of the rural section was to come up with a rural equivalency for our gateway cities. So I've made a suggestion of what that should look like. Other people have made suggestions through the Rural Policy Advisory Commission. And so that goes to the secretary, and hopefully that'll be, you know, become part of a bill that comes out. So once the bill is filed, and I'm expecting that will happen sometime in February, because it does still have to go through the entire legislative process. And of course, this being an election year, the legislative session ends at the end of July. No controversial bills can come up after that point. Non-controversial bills could, but and what they refer to as a controversial bill, basically anything that would garner a bunch of attention that people would want an opportunity to weigh in on. Typically after the July date, the only bills that you would see being passed may be some local bills that have been filed that need to correct something. Roger?
Yeah, well, Tom's question was one I had too, so I'll go on to
Yeah.
something else. It's really important for this plan to help communities help themselves. And we have, especially in this part of the state and in other parts too, a lot of very small communities. And even if we adopt some regionalization, schemes, which I think are essential in the long run, they're still going to be relatively small communities. And for example, I noticed something on one of the lines on the slide about pilot programs. I couldn't catch the whole thing, but really pilots need to be increased to something much more reasonable. And this kind of support would be to support the capacities of local municipalities in all dimensions. And then individual towns can decide where their most important priorities are. And so I would really put in a plug for increasing pilots.
Yeah, I think you'll see that in the governor's budget as well, that that she will be putting in for an increase in pilot. It won't be as much as the communities want. The auditor, as you know, some years back, did a pretty thorough study about what pilot payments should be. In addition to that, there's a bill going through the legislature right now, specifically for the communities around the Quabbin Reservoir, and trying to get the MWRA to up their payments to those communities, saying, hey, look at, you're not really showing what the true value of water is. But the same can be said in other communities, because as you know, pilot is different in different communities. So if you live in a coastal community, your pilot payments are much more than someone that may live in an area that is mainly a wooded area. But, we talk about climate all the time, and you think about what trees do for the climate and the sequestration of carbon. Well, shouldn't that be a price? Shouldn't that, be something to up the pilot payments? So yeah, there's definitely going to be a push to increase the pilot payments. Again, you will see that in the governor's budget, but it won't. It's not as much as it really should be. And I think that's another issue, that we're not valuing things the way they should be valued.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I think we've worn down our guest. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was chock full and very informative for me. That's for
Well, I
everyone else.
hope so. And then, obviously, anytime if, and I'm sorry, I know I kind of like threw out a lot. There's a lot there. And it's kind of difficult to try to condense into just a few minutes on anything, because you could basically take any one category of the plan and, talk about it forever.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Well, that's a perfect segue for the next item, because that's what we're proposing to do over the course of the year, is to really use this as a basis, and then have further discussions on each of the various sections.
Well,
So-
the one thing I would just say on that, because, there will be a bill coming out. So if there's something, like Douglas had mentioned earlier about trying to weigh in as a group, specifically on the child care when that, at the appropriate time. But you may want to think about, if there are things within the plan that you want to focus on, or you think should be part of a bill, I would suggest you do that sooner than later, because you want to get that language, because the next step is going to be the legislature. And so you would want to get that language to your state rep and state senator, so that they could have an ability to file an amendment once the bill has a hearing.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks for the presentation tonight.
All right, thanks, and have a
Very
good
good.
rest of the evening. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
We'll slide on to the next, segue onto the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion on educational and informational emphasis of the commission. Tom, you want to talk about that one?
Well, I'll start, but it was really, this is something that was discussed at the Commission Development Committee last meeting about what we do want to try to emphasize over the next year. I mean, that's one of the roles. So for those who are fairly new, VRPC has several different committees, and one of them is our Commission Development Committee, which does look at educational and informational topics that we may want to have at these meetings. I mean, these meetings are really, hopefully, are supposed to be beneficial to you all. And one thought that we did have was to try to use this economic development plan and the various elements in it and feature a section of it in one way or another at the future meetings over this year. It seems like the state has come out with a boatload of plans recently, and is there a way that they can all be tied together or be made coherent? And can we try to do that? Doug, you can probably explain it better, the thinking better than I can. So,
yeah, basically, I think you nailed it there, Tom. One of the issues that we discuss is the fact that a lot of state initiatives seem fragmented, and it's hard for us as a planning commission to get our heads around how they interconnect, whether it's housing, early childhood education, rural funding for roads, all the things that you talked about, and how they really are not separate, individual, non-interactive initiatives. They all impact on one another. And as a commission, we really need to dig a little deeper and educate ourselves about the impact of each one of those and how we want to lobby, for want of another word, for certain aspects of it. She said that if we wanted to take action, we should move quickly. So what the Commission Development Committee decided was, rather than take specific, somewhat related, but not necessarily, where the full commission may not see the connections, topics at meetings, that we should use the economic development plan as a template for our full year's meetings and dissect it and see how the different components of it interact and see what we want to lobby for. And there's a couple of things that we might consider doing, getting speakers in and so on and so forth, but also possibly consider inviting our legislative delegation to one of our meetings to talk over our concerns once we've digested a bit, and get some other players. One thing that came to mind for me while this was going on is that she talked about the educational component of trying to get college and career readiness into the high schools. It might be very interesting for this commission to hear from Heather Williams from the Berkshire Workforce Board, who has received statewide recognition for the fact that Berkshire County is the only county in this Commonwealth where every high school has a college and career readiness team addressing those issues. And I think that's industry has become aware of that because they're doing internships and job shadows and everything, but I think our members may not be aware of what's going on there. So I think that if we try to tie everything together and say, rather than pick a topic here and pick a topic there, say, let's dig into this report and make a year-long journey to try to see how that could drive our initiatives.
What are we looking to get out of this discussion? Ideas for topics for future meetings, or just an endorsement that the Commission Development Committee should go back and come up with meeting topics based on this concept?
I know we kind of were drinking from a fire hose, but if there are particular issues that the presenter raised that are of interest to people, the commission development might want to hear from you folks and say, is anything out there that really, you know, made your ears perk up? But after that, yeah, I think that what the commission development, you know, is charged with is helping Tom come up with topics for our board meetings. And if the board feels that delving deeper into this report as a basis for what the work we're going to do this year, then yes, but we would definitely seek some input from board members tonight if there was anything there that really, you know, got you thinking.
Go, open to the board members. What do you suggest we would focus on then, other board members?
You know, it's Pedro Pachano from Great Barrington. At our commission meeting, we discussed a topic, regionalization, for example. I think Roger mentioned it a few minutes ago, but the importance into the future of regionalizing more of our communities. And I brought it up in the wake of the school vote down here in South County. But one thing that struck me from what Ms. Goby was talking about was, you know, I'm on planning board in Great Barrington. We do a lot of talking around housing. And it's my feeling that before you can do a real sort of economic development plan, you got to have the housing in place, because you could have a business, you know, you can have some kind of industry that attracts people, but people are not going to be so attracted to not have a place to live nearby and so forth. So I wonder if it might be worth having a discussion on how we, as in our smaller communities, can really implement some of these aspects of the overall economic development plan. With regards, for example, to creating industry, you know, there was a big push for what does she call it? For tech, basically. She had a nice tech. She had a nice name for it. I can't remember what it was. Tech, climate tech, for example. Like, okay, so you know, we've got some building. We have a great building, Housatonic, for example, that can be an incubator for some kind of climate tech. But then we've got no place to house people who potentially work. I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at. But it'd be nice if we had some kind of, especially as a planning board member, if we had some idea of how an economic development plan can actually be implemented by our communities.
Yeah, if I'm Amanda Hamilton from Tyringham, if I may, yeah, I'd like to piggyback onto what Pedro is saying. I mean, I think we really, as a region, we need to really address the housing problem, because certainly in my community, it's really prohibitive for anybody, you know, the kind of young people that supposedly, you know, we want to attract to you know, to come here, because the zoning laws and everything else are just, you know, are basically geared to, you know, building kind of large establishments and second homes. So yeah, I think some real deep study on or thinking about housing is going to be vital. Thank you.
And I would say, you know, certainly housing is a priority. We all know. And to Doug's point around education, I mean, increasing housing that people are really going to come here in and become part of our communities, as opposed to building the second home or building a short-term rental, then we do have to look at how do we include education in that conversation, because the hope would be that we'd have some young families coming with children And I am still thinking about the presentation a couple of months ago about our aging population in the Berkshires, and what that might look like for us down the road. So, you know, what are the things what are the actions we need to take to invite people to come to live here? And education and housing are top priorities. And I am also on the planning board in my community, so we talk about housing all the time.
One of the other things that comes up, and she mentioned it, is transportation. And I know Tom has people at BRPC working on it, but we really do need to come up with some concept of microtransit, last mile stuff in Berkshire County, because until we do that, we're stuck. If we don't have housing, if we don't have transportation, we're stuck.
Okay, I mean, is that good enough in direction for the committee? Doug, Pedro, other members?
Malcolm, I was going to ask you if you were more familiar with I think we've got some on-demand transportation programs happening here, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, and and it's I have no idea how it's working, but it is happening, and I've anecdotally heard some good things, but I have no idea on the whole it's meeting expectations.
But that's being done. That's being done by a young man who developed the program as part of his college graduation project, and it's very dependent on him, and he's doing a wonderful job. I mean, he's a brilliant young man, but I think we have to look at that and engage with him and learn from it, and engage with BRPC to push BRTA and to push BRTA to further embrace the idea of microtransit.
This general topic. The other item that we wanted to get some sense of was, before COVID, we used to do what were called Fifth Thursday dinners, where we would have, you know, a dinner at one of the local restaurants, but also have educational topic. And with COVID, of course, those things stopped. But we were trying to get a sense of, would people go to an in-person event like that? There were only a few of these, few of the months of the year where there are 5 Thursdays. And again, the thinking was that if there were 5 Thursdays, you wouldn't have anything regularly scheduled, because it wouldn't be like the second and fourth or the first and third, because it wouldn't be the first and fifth, because you wouldn't meet off that often. So we thought it would be a free evening. But we wanted to get a sense of if are people going out? Would you go out, or not really? Because there would be, I mean, it's some effort on our part to put together. Right now, with the way prices are at restaurants, the BRPC would probably have to subsidize that in some manner, but there would be a cost to participants as well. So, any feedback?
Well, it seems to me you wouldn't have to go to a restaurant. You could have the meeting be in the BRPC offices and have a very, simple dinner catered. I mean, BRPC could subsidize things by helping to arrange that, and the cost to participants might be, something really quite small.
I guess the question, Roger, is, are people going out yet and to in-person events?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be great to meet up with people in real life.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times a year.
I kind of like Roger's suggestion as kind of a halfway first step.
I was thinking maybe cocktails and hors d'oeuvres somewhere too, instead of dinner.
Yeah.
You know,
I would like to add that I find really persuasive the discussions we've had over many, many meetings about the importance of housing. And I think the link with something like micro transit or, I mean, we have to be careful not to use labels which artificially cramp our approach and maybe even prejudice our activities in the minds of certain observers. So I don't know whether micro transit is that kind of phrase, but I just warn about we need to pick the phrases very carefully. And I think it would be helpful in the discussion of housing to have some reports from people in various towns who tried to use certain kinds of zoning and building codes and that sort of thing to produce good, high quality, but relatively lower cost housing. There's what we often call worker housing. I know in Williamstown, for example, there are two members of the planning board who are really quite interested in this, and one of them is the delegate. He happens not to be here tonight, but he is a quite faithful attendant. That's Corey Campbell. He and Ken Kuttner and others have been really trying to think of combinations that can attract a majority vote at town meeting, to put it very bluntly.
I think, Malcolm, from my perspective, I've got enough input, so you and I can talk about that or come up with something maybe with the executive committee as well. I think I'm sensitive about the time because I know, we've had Mark Malloy waiting here in the wings to, and he's going on vacation tomorrow, so he's really making an extra effort here to hang around.
Well, I appreciate it, Mark. And if the committee has enough information, then we can go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the presentation of the Berkshire Outside website. Mark, thank you for joining us and waiting around.
Thanks, Malcolm. Good evening, everyone. I'm not going to talk about data tonight, so you don't have to listen to me go on about that. So I want to talk about our new outdoor recreation website. Before I do that, though, I do have to acknowledge Laura Brennan. She's been my partner on this project for the last few years. So Laura, feel free to jump in at any time. This project really started in 2019 when we started working on the Berkshire County Outdoor Recreation Plan. One of the things that came out of that plan was the need to have one central location where people can access everything about outdoor recreation on the region. There's a ton of stuff to do in the region, far more than we expected when we first started that plan. And it's just continues to grow ever since that plan was published. So I am going to share my screen. All right, so Berkshire Outside is our new website, and I'll just walk through it really quickly for you. On the home screen, you can search by activity. So if you're interested in hiking or cycling or adventure sports, whatever you want, you can choose your activity, and that takes you to another page, which I'll show you in a few minutes. You can search by town. So you can just say, I live in Hinsdale and I want to go do something in Hinsdale. What's around? You can do that. We also have resources such as retail and guides, and I'll show you all these pages in a few minutes. And then also events, what upcoming events related to outdoor recreation. We also have these broad categories that you can click on and jump to a pre-filtered list on that category. You can do further filtering on it and get additional info. The main part of it is this interactive map and filtering. So you can see as I go around this list, the orange dot on the map jumps around. And so you can see where you're looking at. You can zoom in on the map. and the list filters automatically for what's in your view. You can also choose the topic you're interested in from this. So say you're interested in boating, it'll filter the list to show just the boating locations. You can also add things onto that. I also want to do maybe there's a playground next to the boat launch as well. There's a couple of those. And so you can, customize your filtering some. There's also other types of filters. So is it accessible using some broad ADA terms? Is it a low visitation? One of the things we found during the plan is there's a lot of locations that are really overused. Everyone knows about them. Everyone goes to them. But there's even more locations that are high quality recreational experiences, but not a lot of people use them. And so trying to disperse the crowds throughout the county instead of just a few concentrated locations is one of the focuses of the plan. Another item we added in here that came up several times is near public transit. You're being able to see what parks are close to a bus line is really useful for a large segment of our population. Continuing down the homepage, we have get away from the crowd. So again, this is that low visitation. This is a random selection of assets throughout the county that are these low usage sites. So what I am going to do, I'll just click on one of these options. I'm going to choose boating just randomly. And you can see it just comes up with the boating options. You can dig into boating even more if you're canoeing, kayaking, or SUP. If you're motorized boating, if you're rafting, you can choose what option you're interested in. Further down on that page, there is a what to know before you go. So just some common information, some resources about that activity. So motorboats, do you need to register your boat? How do you go and register your boat? Some of the other activities such as hunting and fishing may have links to the hunting calendar or where to get a fishing license, stuff like that. So it's useful information that people may readily want to be able to access. One of the things we can do when we zoom in on this, I'll just try and pick a random location, Burbank Park Boat Launch. It jumped down to Burbank Park. If I click on that, we have a page dedicated to every one of those assets. So it gives you the location, what activities are available there. So at the boat launch at Burbank Park, you can go boating, obviously. You can go fishing. There's a fishing pier. You can just view wildlife, some birds flying around. You can go ice skating. Also shows, dogs are allowed. It's family friendly. There's plenty of parking. You can do some picnicking there. So it gives you that supplemental information. There's a map, a bit more zoomed in, showing where it is, and gives you a description of that asset. Another thing we want to do with the website is not take traffic away from the asset managers. And so all of these pages have a link where one exists to the asset manager's website. So this would go to the City of Pittsfield's Parks Department. It could go to DCR or trustees of reservation or Mass Audubon, whoever that property owner may be. You can also use it and just click on the button and get directions via Google Maps to it. Further down, it shows you other assets within that same park. So at Burbank Park, it's not just the boat launch. There's a beach, there's Controy Pavilion, there's a dog park, there's a picnic area. So there's lots to do just within that one park. And then the website also shows you, if you're in the area, there's some other assets close by that you might want to go to. You may want to go to Deming Park and play on the playgrounds, or go, play a game of baseball at Benedict Road. So it tries to expose you to more locations in your area. Under resources, We have a whole list of stuff. So we have guides, all the guides within the region, and I realized just this afternoon that we're missing one that I've got to get added onto that list. We have retailers and rental locations. So again, it just brings you to their website. Clubs and leagues. Say you want to go out hiking, but you want to do it with people, you could click on hiking. Here's some hiking clubs in the area. Or you want to start getting involved more with paddling, here's some options for who you can go paddling with. And then we have all of our various summer camps. Summer camps are not listed on the asset pages and the maps because they're private things that they're not really open for public recreation. We also have the event page. One of our partners on this project is One Berkshire. And so all of their members who have events posted on berkshires.org, if it is related to outdoor recreation, automatically gets ported over to our website. So many of these items are just being pulled right from berkshires.org. We also have the option of adding events manually that Laura and I find out about. Asset managers, guides, groups, whatever, if they have a event coming up, they can also add their own event. It goes to BRPC for our review, and then we can publish it online. There's a lot here. As a region, we have over, let's see, it shows on the map, 560 assets throughout the county. There's a lot to do. And we just really encourage people to use the website, to let us know if how it's working, if there's any issues, if there's a correction that's needed. There's just a ton of resources there for you. So I will stop sharing. And is there any questions? Did I miss anything, Laura? I'm always missing something. No, okay.
No, it's great.
How do we get word out?
So publicizing it is a challenge we're working on now. We have sent emails to all of our municipalities asking them to include it on their website, put it in newsletters that they have. We're working with all the asset owners and retailers, asking them to put a link on their website. It has been in the local media, and we're continuing to push that, trying to get more exposure there. It is going to be a main part of berkshires.org with links back to us, as well as Berkshire Magazine. They have a 413 Outdoor Rec 413 insert a couple times a year, so it's going to be in Berkshire Magazine. So there's a lot going on. A lot more is needed. And that's something we'll be working on over the next few months.
Is there any way we can get it into the New York City and Boston markets somehow?
So we are, yeah, actually, thanks to One Berkshire, who is the key promotional partner for this project. They have inroads into those markets because they promote the Berkshires in New York and Boston and in between. With the budget that they receive from the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism. So with them as the promotional partner, we're getting this in front of really millions of people who are either visiting their website, berkshires.org, or looking at their social media channels or reading their e-newsletters. So we're very grateful for that partnership that has allowed us to do this and rely on their marketing strength without having to have a separate marketing budget of our own.
Great.
And I'll also just mention, speaking of partners, BNRC and DCR have been partners with us over the last year as we've been developing the website and coming to all of our meetings every other week as we figure it out. So they've been good partners for us. Roger, do you have a question?
Roger, go ahead.
No, I just have a comment. I think this is really marvelous. And I just want to add that it's an example of what BRPC can do for our region. We have resources, we have special skills. We have some budgets and certain pockets, and so we can produce something like this. And I just think it's great for the region. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura, Mark, anybody else who was involved.
Thank you. And we should point out that the partner that we had to actually build the website is local. Gemini Creative out of Stockbridge was the web developer, and they were phenomenal.
Oh.
Is phenomenal. My wife and I have spent hours going through this site already, and it's just the surface. I mean, there's so much in there. My wife wanted me to ask you though, is there an app associated with it?
So that's a great
Carry this thing
question.
around my hand.
Yeah. The website is built to be responsive on a mobile device. So it will look like an app if you go to the website. And I even have a little icon saved on my home screen so that it feels like an app. But it's basically you're looking at the website in a responsive manner that
It's terrific. It's terrific.
mobile.
Tom, we were talking in the commission development also about getting word out about what we do. Could we see if we could get the Eagle to do some article on this? Because I think this is huge. I think this is just a wonderful thing for the Berkshires. And it would be nice to name our partners and see how it was done collaboratively with One Berkshire and so on. So it would be a feel-good story for the Eagle to cover.
Yeah, did we get coverage in the Eagle? I thought we got some coverage.
They didn't publish the entire press release, and I have some follow-up going on to see if we can get something a little bit more detailed from them. And I think what we may want to do is actually work through Berkshire's Week, which is more of a lifestyle side of their publication, somewhere between the Eagle and the Bee, and that may be a more fitting spot for this.
Good idea.
I guess I have a question. Is there going to be something like they have for the national parks where you get a stamp if you go to all the different places and 590?
We've talked
Next time we
about
get
things,
funding for this,
but
yeah. Phase two.
Well, hats off to you guys.
Yeah, it's a wonderful website. It's so well organized.
Yeah.
it's been a labor of love, I think, for both Laura and I. You know, we both love outdoor recreation, and we really enjoyed this project. We were happy to see the site go live, but we're kind of sad because the project is like wrapping up, and we wanted to keep working on it. So, but it's been a really good project.
There's going to be some maintenance on it.
Yes,
there is.
Well, and I don't know if it's over yet because we had a meeting with Paul Janicki, who is newly appointed Massachusetts Director of Outdoor Recreation, and he was very excited about this site. So, I mean, it may be something that the state can replicate statewide somehow. So,
Don't let them steal our guys.
no, we're not going to steal. They're not going to steal it. We're going to hire out to the state.
Exactly.
The filter will now say 50,061. All right. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could I just add one thing to the last discussion? I just thought of one thing that people like me like to do is take walking trips. That's a string of interesting sites. Some of them are natural. A lot of them are historical. Some might be some place where you can actually stop and do something in an extended way, like a library or a museum or something like that. But anyway, there's like things that would take about an hour or an hour and a half. And I'm sure you could gin up a lot of these things. I guess one problem would be you'd have to be selective and there'd be some issue of favoritism. But anyway, it's something to think about. I like them.
Yeah, we've actually had a few other people suggest that we incorporate like the self-guided walking tours of downtowns, either historically focused or arts focused. And so we're looking at that and receiving some information from folks who have already mapped out walking tours, self-guided walking tours that we might be able to share in the future on this site.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions for these guys? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, let me get my agenda back there. The next item on the agenda is the executive director's report. Tom, do you have anything to highlight there? Any questions?
Yeah, if people got questions, I just remind communities that the DLTA applications are due very quickly. So if your town hasn't sent one in, do so if you want to do so. But pretty straightforward.
Okay. So there's no questions to Tom. Okay, then I guess we are, it's time for the final motion. I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Sheila.
Second.
Thanks. Anybody want to go? Kate, would you do the vote, please?
Will. Sorry. I see Diana did join us. Diana Mott from Beckett. Welcome. Peter?
Aye.
Caleb?
Aye.
Sorry. Pedro?
Aye.
Keith?
Yep, we got you.
Leanne?
Aye.
Buck?
Yes.
Laura? Sheila?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.